Hi, Karen.
Hi, Kino.
How you doing?
I'm doing great today. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So nice to finally meet you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. Actually, Mickey brought me your publicist. He brought me to your attention a while back, but then we only had this day to actually schedule it. And so I said, now it's like officially a pleasure
Well,
to meet you.
well, thank you. Thank you so much.
So where you coming to us from?
I live in California.
California, nice. How's it this time of year on that side of the world?
Well, it's not so nice this time of year on this side of the world. We're looking for snow today. It's raining outside. It's cold. We're just getting into winter. So we should have some snow today. There's already snow on the mountains behind us. It's beautiful. So that's the good part of this time of year.
Yeah, but you love the winter or you're more a summer person?
I'm actually I don't love the winter. I'm more of a Florida girl by nature. I wasn't actually born there, but I love the temperatures in Florida. I love the weather there. So we sort of endure winter and look forward to the solstice when the days are getting longer again and spring coming. Like,
Yeah, I'm the same. I do not like winter at all. At all. And the crazy thing is, like in South Africa at the moment, this is our summer months,
uh-huh.
but it's a complete mess. I don't know whether I should put it down to global warming,
Hmm.
because like July, yeah, I would say June, July, August, and a bit of September is our winter months. And then you'll get the rainy season. And then it's like full blown summer, sun is out,
Hot.
beach vibes. But over the last 2 years, the rainy season has come like later on in the year. So this is the second year in a row where the rainy season has come like in the middle of November, and it's
Oh.
storming. You know, it's storming, continuous rain, and it's probably going to be like this like until the end of November, and the sun is out again.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So let's just say, like, I do not like this. I do not like sitting in the cold.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. But anyway, at least we still getting the podcast going. That's what counts.
That's right. We got indoor
Without
stuff
doubt.
today. That's good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, Karen, when I read your description from Mickey, once again for the listeners, who is your publicist, phenomenal guy. When he sent me your bio, which was a lengthy bio, I first sat there, I was reading it, I was digesting it, and then I got overwhelmed and I was like, wow, this is quite a phenomenal individual. You know, this is like someone who has a whole lot of history to share, who will
Oh.
educate not only me, but also the listeners. And I was like, yeah, okay, let's go for it. Let's go for it. So before we get into your writing, your artistic work, let's go back to day one. Law school, criminal prosecutor. How did it all start for you?
Oh my goodness. Actually, I started out in psychology of all things. I got a master's degree in humanistic psychology way, way, way back. Um, and of course, there's no career for that unless you want to go to get a PhD, and I didn't want to do that. And I hooked up with a boyfriend who was very handy. He liked to fix things and build things. He was a mechanic. And we came out to California together, and he was a very good arguer. We used to argue a lot, which is why he's an ex-boyfriend. But I said to him at one point, I said, you should go to law school. And he said, well, I don't really want to go to law school. Why don't you go to law school? And I said, oh, that's a good idea. Why don't I go to law school? It sounded like the more I thought about it, the more I thought that would be a great thing to do. So by then we had established residency in California. I had in-state tuition, and I went to UCLA School of Law, which was a fabulous place. And that's where my law career started. So that's how that got going.
So it was more of a spontaneous move rather than something that you were passionate about. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It kind of it checked a lot of boxes for me. So of course it made my parents very happy. It was a good stable career. It made me happy in the sense of knowing that it was a good stable career. But also I think that the law is a really interesting thing. There's sort of a strong sense of right and wrong, and that appealed to me. And there was a lot of research involved, and that appealed to me. And there was writing involved, and that appealed to me. So it was a very good fit in many ways. As I got into the career, it was very stressful in ways I hadn't expected, and being a criminal prosecutor is very stressful. You see the worst part of humans as well as some of the best parts of humans. So it was a good thing to say I have done. And I'm very happily retired now, which lets me do what I really love, which is writing.
Yeah. So why a prosecutor, not an attorney?
Well, a prosecutor is an attorney here. So it's a specialized kind of attorney who works for local government or the state. So
but instead of defending people, you prosecute them.
Why a prosecutor instead of a defense attorney?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a great way to say it. Yeah.
Well, I sort of fell into that one. That was really one of the happy accidents of my life. I had known some people, some other attorneys here in town, and when a job opening came up in the prosecutor's office, they basically asked me if I wanted to apply, and I did, and I loved it. It was wonderful. So
it's sort of like being like, as you said, right or wrong, but being a prosecutor is putting the bad guys away.
yes.
It's like a conscious thing, sorry, like putting the bad guys away instead of defending them.
There is sort of that sort of sense of you're trying to stand up for the little guy, the victim who's been hurt, and you're trying to stand up for the law and, for things to be done the correct way. So there is sort of that sense of right and wrong. And I think that's a dangerous thing, of course, because you don't want to have a swelled head and think that you're the only arbiter of what is right and what is wrong. So it's good that people have defense attorneys to present the other side. Yeah.
But you also have to be like brave, to be a prosecutor per se, instead of a defense attorney, because your life is always at risk.
There is some risk to that as well, yes.
It's like being one makes you sleep better at night. Being the other makes you keep your eyes open at night. Like
I'm not sure. I've never done defense work, so I don't know. But the defense attorneys that I know are very passionate about what they do. They often really feel like they're the ones defending the truth, right, and justice. And they do call things to the attention of the court, for example, which has got to make the decision ultimately about what's the correct viewpoint. But they will turn up things and say, well, this was not done correctly. This is not right. The defendant's rights do need to be protected. So it's good to have that balance. It's good to have the balance.
I think they still do it for the money. There's more money in it.
I don't think they get paid near enough for what they do, but they deal with some very difficult people in some difficult situations, and many times they are defending people who are not the most lovable people with very tragic backgrounds of their own, have done pretty horrible things, and they see some. As a defense attorney, I think you probably see a lot of awful things too, and it wears on you. I like to believe the good of people, and it's hard to constantly see the bad. Yeah.
I mean, there's always good, right? And I do believe, people, there's always good, and people do deserve a second chance.
Yes.
That's my faith in humanity.
Well, there's second chances, and there's third chances, and there's fifth chances, and it does get a little frustrating sometimes because judges like to believe the best of people too, and they want to believe that when they tell somebody to go out and do good in the world, that they will. And often these are very damaged people, and it's difficult. So it's a very tough job. It's a tough job, and we're lucky to have the people doing it that we do. And I'm lucky to be writing now.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. What you said earlier, about stability and your parents being happy because you found stability, and to an extent, you were also happy because you found stability. That's sort of an obstacle that all creators sort of encounter in their lives, right? You've encountered it. I've encountered it. Hey, mom. Hey, dad. I want to be a writer. I want to be a musician. I want to be a painter. I love to write poems. I want to turn this into a full-time career. And then the parents are like, what's that? That's not stable. That's for fun. It needs to be a hobby, So what was your experience with that? Because you always had it deep in your heart that, I want to do writing. It was there. But we end up in a situation where we want to please everyone else besides ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
It's that awful, how realistic do you want to be? How safe do you want to be? It's a really tough choice. You don't know this about my background, but so my book talks about my dad a little bit. My dad was a musician. He was a concert pianist and a very talented one. And he made that tough trade-off decision early in his life too. He wanted to perform. He was very talented and had lots of musical ability. He had a lot of people behind him, pushing him in that direction. But he also wanted a family and he wanted that stability. And the trade-off he wound up making was he got a job teaching at a college. And that allowed him the freedom to perform. In fact, they encouraged him to perform. But it also allowed him a steady paycheck and the financial ability to raise a family. I'm not sure everybody has that choice, but for him, that turned out to be a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, no, not everybody does have the choice because of economical circumstances, which is sad in a way because I feel, such individuals will grow up, with so many regrets and not being fully happy because, I never go for it. I never go out and do what I love most. It's sad. And then at a later stage, like, I don't believe, there's an age, and you should know this from experience, where you can say, okay, you know what? I'm going to stop now. I don't want to be a prosecutor anymore. I'm just going to jump in and I'm going to write books, you know? So for listeners out there, I mean, it's never too late.
It's never too late. It's never too late. No,
yeah, that's the point I was getting at.
It's never too late, and I think that is a very good point. For me, I actually managed to do both. So I wrote books while I was still a prosecutor. I just made time, nights, evenings, weekends. I wrote. So I didn't put my passion aside just because I was doing this other thing to make money. I made sure that I taught myself the skills I needed to teach myself. So I taught myself book layout and design. I took vacations and I took classes in doing that. It's harder. It's much more difficult. And you probably found some of this yourself, that doing the things that put the food on the table takes a lot of hours. But if you're really passionate about something, you find a way to work in other hours that you can work on your craft or work on steps toward what you really want to be doing.
Yeah. As we said, everyone's situation is different, but I just feel like sooner or later, you have to take that jump, because like our brain automatically thinks of everything that can go wrong. I'm going to leave my 9-to-5 job and I'm going to be a full-time writer.
Right.
The brain automatically now, because of that fear, defense mode, it goes into defense mode. What if it doesn't work out? But for me, it's like, what if it does work out?
Right.
Right.
What if it does work out? Exactly. Take that leap of faith. I think you have to know when you're ready to take that leap of faith and maybe have a backup plan so you have a little bit of security if you would need that security too. Writing is not a career that's easy to make money at. That's for certain.
Yeah.
So
you
have
to diversify,
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're correct. No one knows when it's the right time. Like, I'll share a bit about, me. like I've always been, involved in music, growing up. It was always music. I was consumed by it. I was consumed by the business of music, not knowing one day, I would start my own independent record label and like just go for it. And, I've always been a DJ as well my whole life. And that's how I started off in school, small parties, church functions, that sort of thing. And then it evolved into like your high school socials. And, from there it evolved into, the nightclubs. But from my early 20s, I did not want to go to university. Like I went to college for a short while, but it was like short courses, and within a year I was out. But I didn't want to like spend the next 6-7 years of my life, specializing, to be a doctor or an attorney. I'm intrigued about, the careers. Like, I love law. I love how law works, the machine, and I am intrigued about it. But it wasn't for me. Like, I always knew deep down, like, I wanted to be in the music scene, I wanted to be there. That's like what I love doing. And it was always 50-50. I had to work because, as you said earlier on, that was seen as stability. It made my parents happy. And then I did, the music 50% of the time. I even hosted my own events. So it was like, working a full day, getting home, you going to the nightclub because either you're going to DJ or you're hosting the event itself. You're getting home at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. in the morning, you're getting about 2 hours sleep, and then it's back to work again. But I was content with that lifestyle. It was okay for me. I didn't have family. There was no wife. So it was okay. It was okay. And then just before I could hit 29, I was like, nah, this is not working out for me. But I still didn't want to go full in. Like I couldn't force myself, because I started thinking, I've got to give up this and I've got to give up that, and COVID came along, right? COVID came along, and then I got forced into doing it full time. I was like, okay, there's nothing else I can do right now. So let me start focusing on my music production, because I've just been putting that on hold for so long because I've just been so caught up, 50%, in a career. And from 2020 till now, I've just been pushing that. But one thing I've evaluated for myself, that no matter how hard it ever got financially, I've given myself 10 years, because you basically, and I mean, if parents of today will actually empower their kids to follow their dreams and hearts, they wouldn't have to go through what we've gone through. Not saying everything we've been through, you and I, hasn't counted for something. The experience has given us experience, right? But there's more opportunities right now if they just allow their kids to pursue it at a young age. So I had to rebuild, I had to reprogram how I've been living life, from the time I was born, until my 20s, and start now, learning and educating myself and keeping myself informed, just a complete change of lifestyle, right? But like I got forced into it, and it was forced. But what I was saying is that what I've learned is, no matter how hard it's ever been, because you're truly passionate about what you're doing and you got good intentions, it's not about the money, it's not about the fame. I love doing what I do. I found out for myself that God, the universe, provides.
It does.
It will provide for you in ways that you just never know how this happened, right? Like I always saw myself, there was always food on the table, always had shelter. There's a warm bed to sleep in at night, So I looked at that and I gave gratitude for that. And I just kept going and kept going. And I knew deep down in my heart, no, I'm going to wake up tomorrow. And whether I'm getting paid or not, I am going to do this. How frustrating it gets, how overwhelming it gets, what's happening with the economy, what's happening globally. I'm just going to keep going. But. And you tend to realize for yourself that, hey, the necessities actually in your life are here. So what more could I possibly need now? Will more come? I believe so. I do believe so. But it'll happen in God's time, not my time. Because what you may be going through as a creator, chasing that passion, there's lessons to be learned along the way.
Yes.
And that's blessings in disguises, So I don't look at it as, oh no, why is this happening to me? Like, what can I gain out of this? Like, what can I really gain out of this? It's happening to me for a reason. So what can I learn out of this that's going to enhance me, to pave the next year forward? That's what I take away from it, But if you're not passionate about it and you're doing it for the wrong reasons, you're always going to see all the struggles, it's not working out. And I've come across many creatives, in 2-3 months, they're done. They got back to their job, they've given up, you don't hear from them again. So that's just a bit, what I've experienced.
Well, so you really want to motivate people to just keep going and keep following the passion, because they have that. If you have the passion strong enough, you will. I think you really will. If you are tuning into it deep enough, but you have to really want it. And one of the best pieces of advice I ever got from another writer was, you have to invest in yourself. You have to be willing to spend the money to learn what it is that you need to learn, and to put your money behind yourself for advertising or marketing or whatever it is. you have to invest in yourself. And some of what you're talking about is investing in yourself just to keep going, just showing up every day to do what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah. And the universe will respond. The universe will respond.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. Investing in yourself is so critically important. Like if you don't know something, you need to invest, in someone who's going to teach you what you attempting to do because they've already done it.
Right.
So that's critically important as well. You need to build a network, a network of good people, coaches, mentors, publicists, whoever, you need to build that way because it's going to, get you where you need to be. But if you're not willing to invest yourself, and let's be honest, there isn't many that want to invest because they're scared of taking the risk. Okay, I need to invest so much, and
Very frightening.
yeah. It's the fear. The fear is, taking charge again. So why should I invest, for example, $1,000, every single month on this coach? So if you're not willing to learn, then how far are you expecting to go?
Right.
Yeah.
And investing your time, you're putting your time behind it as well. You're putting your time and your energy behind it. And that's a different kind of investment, right?
Yeah. One of, while I'm on the topic of coaches, one of my ex-coaches was actually the first manager for Taylor Swift, Rick Barker. So, he once said, in what was it that we did? It's a tip of my tongue, a workshop, right? So there was a workshop with all the students, and he said, this journey is going to cost you time, money, or both. So if you don't have the money, it's okay because look, there is some people that just don't have the money. They would love to invest in themselves,
Right.
but they don't have the money. Okay, so it's going to cost you time. You need to put in the time. It's going to take a bit longer, but you still got time, and nobody can take that away from you, right? So that's free. That's free. Yeah. So yeah, that's that.
And I think what you said is really a valuable thing to me as well. You said nobody can take that away from you. What you learn, you take with you, which is so important. It's just having those skills. Like for me, there was a big investment in learning to be able to make the book, the actual technical part of laying out the book and making it into a book format. So learning InDesign was the very hard struggle for me. But once you do it one time, you go, oh, I can do this again and again and again. It's a skill that you take with you. And it's very empowering. That keeps you going. I think when you learn something like that, it makes you feel good because you can go on and teaches you that you can learn new things. And I think that's the one place that education falls down in this country anyway, is it maybe encourages too much rote learning and not enough encouraging students to know that they are learners. They can learn what they don't know. Maybe it comes from a textbook, maybe it comes from other people, maybe it comes from a video or a course or something online. But if you don't know something, you can find somebody who will teach it to you, or you can find a tool of some kind that will teach it to you. And being a lifelong learner, I think, is really important. We don't just get out of school and we're done.
Yeah.
100%.
I'm gonna quote what you said earlier on, like, when you said you have to want it. So the same with learning, you have to want to learn.
Yes.
If you want to get any growth in your life.
Yes.
You have to.
And it's frustrating. You're always learning, and that's frustrating. You think, okay, I'm going to be done now. But you have to always, technology changes so yeah.
No, 100%. I remember times where, like a new tool or software would come out, or a plugin, and I'll be like, okay, let me get myself involved with this, right? And then you get yourself involved with it, a day, two later, you like master it. Then something else drops.
Right.
Right.
It's a little frustrating, but yeah, you added another learning curve. Yeah.
Exactly. As you said, technology is always changing, so we have to keep learning here as well. So what age did you decide, okay, I'm going to leave law and just focus on my writing?
I left law when I retired at 65, and that's when I really focused. Well, actually before that, I took about 8 years out in the middle. I was right out of law school. I got a job, did well. And I spent a couple of years at a big firm in Los Angeles. And then I moved to a small community up in the mountains and built houses with this boyfriend, which was a new kind of learning curve. And that was kind of fun. And I did a little bit of writing while I was there. I worked for a little newspaper and I wrote some articles for them. And then I left the boyfriend and went back to work as a lawyer for a while. And then I got married. And when I got married, I was not real happy with what I was doing. I was working in a real estate law firm. And my husband said, "Why don't you stay home and write?" And I said, "That's a great idea. I'd love to do that." So I spent about 8 years as a full-time freelance writer, which is what convinced me I needed more stability than that. That's a tough way to make a living. It was back when magazines were still a thing, print magazines were still a thing, and I did well at it. I mean, I really, in the success level for writers, I got some articles in some pretty big magazines, which was wonderful, but the pay level was really minimal for the amount of energy and time you put in. And finally, I just decided I'm going back to law. That makes more sense. So I did have that interim time where I actually got to do what I really loved for 8 years. And it proved to me that I could do it, which was good. But then to go from there, I went back to work and finally was able to retire at 65 with, again, stability and security of knowing I could do whatever I want to do. I write whatever I want to write now. It's really wonderful. So these are passion projects for me, the books that I'm writing now, as I guess you figured out from the book that you saw.
Yeah. So let's touch on your books because you are diverse when it comes to your genres.
Yes.
Really diverse. I mean, we've got nonfiction history, right? Over there, we've got romance mixed in between. So, so 65, you retire, you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to start writing now. What is the first piece of material that you wrote?
Oh, so again, I wrote books and magazine articles all along, even while I was working. So my first real book was a history book. That was before I retired. And I did a bunch of other things that were nonfiction history. But the first thing when I retired, what was it that I wrote? I think I started a series of time travel romances. And I enjoyed reading time travel romances. And so I just got the history woven into it. So I enjoyed doing that. And
I'm going to ask, so you can do like time travel romance. What are we talking about here?
Oh, okay. So it's a woman's book, a woman's romance book. It has a love story in it. And the theme of it is that there's some leap in time. So one of the characters goes back in time and meets somebody and they fall in love, that kind of thing. Or somebody goes to the future and meets somebody, but they're from a different time era. So you get to talk about the things that were different in the 1860s or the 1870s, for example. It's an interesting format because it did work in some of the historical things that I had written about in other ways, nonfiction history. So yeah, and I set my books actually where I live. So I live in an area where there's a very rich history of silver mining and ranching, and so I got to talk about wagons and people who were in Virginia City, which was part of the Comstock Silver Lode and the silver mining area. So I get to work in details that I actually know about because I live in that area.
Yeah. Just thinking about that love story. That's a complicated love story.
I mean, they meet each other, they fall in love. So I don't know.
Yeah. So you go to the future, you meet someone, you fall in love, but you're in two different worlds.
You're from two different worlds. That's kind of the struggle. Yes, you're from two different worlds. And will you stay together? Will you go to the future? Will you go to the past? Where will they meet up? Right.
Sure. I wouldn't personally want to be in that situation. I'm just putting that out there.
I don't know. I don't think I would like to live in the 1860s. Part of me would like to live in the 1860s. It was a simpler time of life. At least when we look back on it, we think of it as simpler. And that's one of the fun things to explore in a book like that, because my female heroine character goes back and she has to learn how to churn butter, and she has to wear these long dresses, and the hems of the long dresses get dirty in the mud, and she has to deal with chickens, and there's a rooster that chases her around the yard. Now, it's a type of life that we don't have in the city today. So that kind of is fun as well.
Yeah. I remember a few weeks ago, there was this meme that I came across, and the meme showed woman from the 50s and 60s, showed woman from the 80s, and then 2025. And the funny part, about this whole meme, the whole joke around it was there was so much beauty, in those years, where versus 2025 compared to 2025, it's all just artificial,
Yes.
which is true.
Well, it was very different in a lot of ways. Life was, the images of beauty were very different, of course, back then too. And the 1880s or the 1870s, women wore corsets and it was hard to breathe. And I mean, their images of what was beautiful, they worked hard at to some extent. But my great grandmother was a seamstress, and she actually made a living making clothes for people. We don't even think about that today. You buy clothes, you go to a store and you buy clothes. She would follow the latest fashions, which of course came out in women's magazines. They were very elaborate. So you'd have yards and yards of fabric and big skirts, and they'd be down to the floor, and petticoats and things. And being a seamstress was a tough profession, I can imagine. You'd be sewing all day long. But the things that they created were truly art in their own way. If you look at the old dresses, they're just beautiful. So there's a part of me that's interested in the fashion end of that too. Fashions definitely change. Yeah.
Yes. When I look at all the clothing, that you find in stores these days, the quality is not that great. The quality is on decline as each year just unfolds. So I would actually appreciate, the clothing from those years that was actually made, because it was probably, clothing that would last.
It would last, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep.
and if you look at the price tag of what you're finding in stores these days, it's ridiculous. And it doesn't even last.
It was amazing, yeah. And people back then would care for things differently. So, for example, you'd spend $5 to $7 for a pair of boots, and that was a lot of money. That was a day's wages or 2 days' wages for a pair of boots. It was a lot of money. And so if the soles of the boots wore out, you had a cobbler. There was somebody who fixed them. We don't fix our shoes anymore. We used to go buy new ones. So yeah, it was a very different thing.
Yeah, no, definitely. It just shows us, how culture is changing. And in my opinion, look, I'm a millennial, but I can be honest, I don't defend, the millennials and Gen Zs. If I see something wrong in society, I'm like, yeah, this don't make sense to me. I just feel like how we're evolving is not really healthy,
The disposable culture. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Things are changing so fast. That's the other thing that you kind of raised that was interesting. Things really are changing fast with the technology and things. Every day you turn around, something's new. There's a new piece of equipment, or there's a new piece of software that you need to learn to feel like you can keep up with just your what you're doing. And that wasn't true. That was kind of fun in the 1880s, reading about that time period. Things were stable, that they didn't change so fast. There was still some change. So you had the buggy whip generation and buggies and wagons, and eventually Henry Ford came along with the cars, and people had to find a new type of technology. But the rate of speed for the change was not as quick as we're experiencing. I think that's part of what a little throws people off. You're always having to keep up. Yeah.
Yeah. And the worst part is that we want to keep up, in 2025, but we're keeping up in debt, because we want to be involved in the latest trends and what's new, what's hot. And we just get ourselves in more and more debt, just keeps going on because we want to fit in. This is hip right now, so we need to fit in. And I feel that it's so psychologically damaging for kids of today. My opinion again.
And debt is very easy to get into. They make sure it's easy to buy what you want.
Yeah, they want you to be in debt. The more you're in debt, the more we can give you. Then we own you.
It's really dangerous, and I don't want to get into politics too much, but there's a trend, right, or a thought right now that they might want to push 50-year mortgages on houses instead of 30-year or 20-year mortgages on houses. 50 years. Can you imagine buying a house and paying for? Nobody gets the payment down, but your payment will be interest, the whole thing. So yes, it's more affordable in a way, but it's getting you more and more into debt. Yeah.
50 years.
50
My
years.
word. 50 years paying for that.
Yes.
Paying for that. But yeah,
little
it's crazy out there. It's crazy out there, And the reality of the matter is, whichever country you go to, the government can just take it away whenever they want to. That's a sad reality of it. But yeah, let's leave
Yeah.
politics to the
Yeah.
politicians.
It's we all want security. We don't have that security sometimes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. So let's talk about one of your books, which involves a hurricane in Miami. Now, when I look at Miami, when I'm watching a movie that's filmed in Miami, I'm just seeing a whole lot of sun, the beaches, good vibes, parties. So you've educated me today because I never know about this. Yeah.
So
So
I'm sorry.
Miami's greatest hurricane.
Yes. What about it? I didn't
Yeah.
hear your question. I'm
So
sorry.
how did you get started with this?
Oh, so my dad lived through the hurricane in 1926. He was 10 years old at the time. And so I grew up hearing stories about the hurricane. He would talk about it, not a lot. He would talk about it a little bit. But he talked about it enough that I knew it was a really important event in his life, in his very young life. And he was ever after afraid of storms. So even as an adult, if there's a big storm coming in, and we actually had a couple of hurricanes when I was growing up, that he lived through it, he would get very nervous, almost like PTSD. He was very afraid of any big storm. So I was always a little bit curious about it. And I loved Miami. I loved going to visit the South. We went back several times. And so I wanted to learn more about this hurricane, what it was that my dad had gone through. And I started collecting memorabilia and pictures, postcards from the hurricane. And luckily, there were a lot to collect. There was a lot of information out there just on eBay. It's really readily available. People are cleaning out their attics or their scrapbooks or their family albums. And there's a lot of photos that were amateur photos that were taken right after the storm. And there were a lot of publications that were sort of yellow journalism. Isn't it horrible kind of publications showing images of the storm and writing about it. So I've collected those for 25 or 30 years, I guess. And finally, once I retired, I said, I can write this book. This is one of the books that was a passion project for me that I really wanted to write about. So that's why it came out just this past spring. But it's been a passion project of mine for a long time, just collecting the material and learning about it. My dad always called it the Great Hurricane. It didn't have a name. They didn't name hurricanes back then. But it really was a turning point for Miami and for Florida as a whole. So it was important, not only in my family life, but important to Miami.
Yeah. And was there a name for this hurricane? Because, hurricanes are labeled now.
They didn't name them back then. So it was just called the Hurricane of 26 or the Great Hurricane or the Great Miami Hurricane. Yeah. So they didn't name it.
And has there been any other hurricanes after that in Miami?
Yes. I've had, of course, quite a few hurricanes after that. There was another one just a couple of months later, actually, and then one in 28 and one in 35, I think it was. And of course, they had Hurricane Andrew in the 90s as well. So they regularly got hit with hurricanes. This was certainly the 26th one was a significant hurricane. It was, I think, the 12th worst storm of the entire 20th century. So it was a Category 4 storm, but it was a very severe storm because they hit straight on. And one of the significant things about it was that nobody knew it was coming. Technology, we were talking about technology and how much it changes. Well, in 1926, there wasn't the same kind of weather forecasting that we have today. So my dad and his family had no idea that a hurricane was on the way until they woke up in the middle of the night and there it was.
Sure. That's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is definitely scary. So, when it comes to nonfiction history, it does, for me, logically, it will take, a bit of time to actually publish that book because there's so much research that needs to happen.
Right.
You have to have your facts straight. The last thing you need is an author to publish this book, that's nonfiction history, but it's not the whole truth.
Right.
Right.
So there's a lot of research that goes into it. For me, it was also a lot of collecting of photographs, and personal photography was brand new at the time. The Brownie camera had just come out around 1900. And so by 1926, people actually had personal cameras. It wasn't just a studio kind of photography. And that's part of why there were so many images of this storm. And it was really fun for me fun, kind of scary to see the pictures. If you saw the book, some pretty tragic pictures of people after the event, and then also the buildings, what happened to the homes blown off of their foundation, roofs were blown off. So it's almost like standing there. These are very moving pictures. So it was fun for me to be able to include those in the book and really give you a feeling for what it must have been like right after that storm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, not really do I have an author, who deals in nonfiction history. So, questions just like pop up in my head. So, writing this book and getting it out to market, would your goal be is to get it into schools, universities, so you can educate them about what happened in Miami during this period? Or or can we take away something from this as to prepare for an hurricane that may come again, which was as severe as this one?
So my goal in writing the book was really to ensure that hurricane in particular is not forgotten. And it's going to be exactly 100 years this coming year. So it was 1926 in September of 2026. It'll be exactly 100 years. So it seemed like a really appropriate time to publish a book about something that's exactly going to hit the centennial mark. And I want people to not forget that hurricane. Millennials and people who were born more recently, they may remember or may have read about Hurricane Andrew or Hurricane Katrina. The more recent hurricanes were devastating and were horrible, and they're hitting the news in a way that people think of them more. But the 1926 hurricane was historically very significant for Miami, and it changed the building codes. It changed the face of Miami in some very important ways. And for the people who went through it, they're 100 years old now. So nobody's still alive to tell that story. It was important to me personally to make sure those stories are not forgotten. So the book just gets into some research institutions or some libraries or the History of Miami Museum. There's the Art Deco Museum is carrying my book, for example. I wanted people to remember that this was a really important storm that changed the direction of Miami. It put Florida into the Great Depression 3 years earlier than the rest of the country. So it had a very significant impact on all of Florida's history. So I wanted that to get out to people, and it was a way to preserve my dad's story a little bit. It was a way to preserve these really cool photographs and to share those with anybody else who's a history buff besides me.
Yeah. Wow. I could have not have asked for a better answer. You're protecting history.
Yes.
You want people to remember. You want people to know, which is great.
Yes.
Which is great.
And to know that what happens today is partly as a result of that. So, for example, in Florida, they changed the building codes with pretty much each hurricane that came along. They learned something from it. You were talking about that. You learn from each bad experience. And they did that. They took the good away from these really horrible experiences. And they said, well, we can do a better job of connecting the roof attachments, for example, or making glass more shatter resistant and things like that. So the 1926 hurricane was a big step toward making them just start to change the building codes in Florida, and particularly in the Miami hurricane area, to be more hurricane resistant. And that's actually a good thing and a bad thing. It's, you have to be kind of careful, what you wish for, because each step that you take to make a building stronger also increases the cost generally, right? And at a certain point, becomes cost prohibitive. You start pricing people out of the market. And we're starting to see some of that in Miami too. People are not able to afford the new fees that are required to upgrade their residences or their condos. So it's a little bit of a mixed blessing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I feel you what you're saying there. With your work, like, you're not leaving any room for discrepancies, which is good. As I said, you don't want to, what you've pushed out to market is based on facts. There's photos to back up, what you're writing. There's a podcast that I follow. It's called Philosophize This. And I was listening to one today, which is called The Tragic Death of Julius Caesar, which is linked back to the play. Now, across the globe, when we talk about Julius Caesar, we think of Shakespeare, and our only reference is the play itself. Mm-hmm. But there's discrepancies in the play, and it was for a reason, because there's a deeper meaning into what Shakespeare was actually telling the world. He was actually educating the world, like, proper versus, what the teacher at school is educating you about on the play. So that was quite cool. But that's how we preserve history, is to tapping into these people who are actually educating you based on facts and not or not just on a play and our own interpretation of it. And when I was listening to it, I was actually like, wow, I never know this. And look, I had to study Julius Caesar and Shakespeare in school. It was one of the most popular plays, and I'm sure across the globe, it's a play that always pops up in school, in English class, whatever class it's popular. So listening to this today, I was like, yeah, this guy who's hosting the podcast, actually studied Shakespeare, actually took a deep dive into the hidden codes and messages. And I was like, yeah, Shakespeare actually preserved history, but you actually have to tap into it, go deep down to actually understand what he was saying to the world, how I'm educating you, the deeper mess. But we've lost our way politically, globally. I don't want to jump into politics, but politically, globally, even South Africa, we've lost our way. If only we tapped into all these messages from the past, there wouldn't be issues in the world, to sum it up. But there is, unfortunately, because for me, like if I could, with the magic wand, I'll be like, boom, 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 the deeper meaning of Shakespeare, of Julius Caesar, it will just change millions of lives. But
yeah,
anymore.
I think one of the reasons Shakespeare is so popular is because people are storytellers. People are motivated by story, and story is so important no matter what you're writing. So, I mean, obviously I love story because I love like fiction writing is about stories, but nonfiction is about storytelling too. And some of the most powerful parts of the Hurricane book, for example, I actually reprinted people's own words when they described what they went through in the hurricane. And that's a personal storytelling. And I read somewhere about humans are geared to listen to and learn from stories. And you think about primitive days when people sat around the campfires and told stories, they often had messages in them. Some of them were horror stories, but some of them were also history stories. They were recounting the history of a tribe or the history of their people. And this is part of how it makes the learning more, you can remember it when there's a story attached to it. If it's just facts, bare facts, like, okay, the hurricane was 135 miles per hour wind. Well, that's boring. Nobody's interested in just the facts. But if you hear the story of someone who says, I went through a hurricane and I heard the roof being ripped off, that's a story that you carry with you. And it's it's about the learning, right? It's about, you want to, yeah.
It's all the hidden messages, any author, I've had the privilege of I've had amazing authors come onto the show, and organic original authors who are truly passionate about what they do. And when we tap into this topic of, the hidden messages in their work, is because they are telling people, whether it's fiction or non-fiction, right? And I mean, non-fiction, can be slightly harder. You have to use your imagination like a whole lot here. But all of them have a hidden message that could actually educate you, teach you something new. You read a book and you think, okay, this was a story, but I can take so much from this and apply it to my own life. And maybe there's something I'm going through now that actually attracted me to this book. And I've read it and like, okay, wow, now I've got the solution to it. Now you've got it. It wasn't just a story. That's the power of storytelling, right?
That is part of storytelling, right? Something that you can apply to your own life, right? Exactly.
Yeah, no, 100%. So maybe we've touched on your historical work, your romance, right? You also write sudden mysteries.
Yes,
Sudden mysteries,
right?
Yeah, sudden mysteries. So what's that about?
So I have a series of mystery books, and again, I write what I love. So I love to write, to read mysteries. So this was fun for me. So this is a series about a woman protagonist who is an amateur sleuth who lives in a van. So she's part of the van life movement, I guess you'd say, and she lives with a parrot, a bird, and I have a bird. So of course that made it kind of fun to work that into the story. And so she travels, and the kickoff to the series was she's looking for her father. She finds out through DNA that the father who raised her, it was not her biological father. So she's off looking to find the biological father that she never met. And she goes to places in the American South looking for him. And she eventually does find him in the second book and then goes on to solving other mysteries. But along the way, she encounters fascinating people and murders, and she tries to solve the mysteries that she's stumbled across. So it incorporates the things that I love again. So I love the American South. It gives me an opportunity to write about places that I really have been or have lived or have traveled through, or would like to travel through in one case. And the protagonist is a woman who's sort of an adventurous sort. So I get to live vicariously through her, and that's kind of fun too.
Wow.
Yeah.
This takes me back now a few minutes when I said, you're so diverse, but you're passionate about each and every single genre that you're writing.
And I think, we started out talking about how did I become a lawyer and all those things. Unlike you, I never knew what I wanted to be when I grew up. So I didn't have that same internal driving force that you did. You knew from an early age you wanted to do music and music production and that kind of thing. I didn't know what I wanted to be. And I think that's an important lesson for people who don't know that when they're young, is it's okay not to know. I thought I was supposed to know when I was 12. I thought I was supposed to know by the time I was 20, and I didn't. And even though when I became a lawyer, it was like, well, this is not the end of my world. It's fun. It's nice. I like that. But I think some people it's a blessing and a curse to be able to do many different things, and to be able to investigate each of those things in turn in your life is a wonderful thing. That's just so it's okay to change careers. That would be my message. It's okay to go on to something else and explore a different side of yourself.
Yeah. Keep exploring, there's no age to it. Keep exploring. It's funny that you said a blessing and a curse. Like when I started this podcast, it was like, this cheap condenser mic, that I just picked up. And I was like, I called my buddies, so it was all the creative people that I worked with the events, So one of the guys, he did all, the artwork for us whenever we hosted events. I'm like, you're going to be my first guest. You're going to be able, come on, let's talk about this. And crazy enough, the first episode I ever did was Being a Creator, a Blessing and a Curse. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Because it is, and it's how we felt at the time,
Yeah.
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 And
It is a curse to be creative.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is. And like when you said, not knowing what you want to do or what you want, for your future to look like, the advice that I can just give, to listeners is look at what you love doing the most that's considered a hobby to the external world, So whatever it is, find out why, take a deep dive into like, why do I love doing this?
Yes.
Like, yes, I knew, but I also didn't know because I didn't have direction at that time. I knew like I love to listen to music. That's all sort of like it gave me a sense of belonging. But I don't know which way do I go now, right? Am I going to be this? Am I going to be that? And it was once mentioned on the podcast as well, sometimes I'm going to use music as an example. So maybe you set out to say, okay, I'm going to be a singer, right? And you take singing lessons, you go all out, but it's not working out for me, right? Because maybe I'm not that of a good singer, maybe I'm not doing so well at it. And what we learned from that episode with that guest was, even though you may not be good at singing, doesn't mean you need to leave music like as a whole. There's other things you could possibly do in it. Like I look at my DJ career, right? There's DJs I grew up with that went on to be great DJs, performing on big stages here in South Africa. And then I should always ask myself, okay, why don't I have that push to do that? Like, I was content, DJing in the clubs, weddings, birthdays. Yeah, cool, no problem. And I still do it. I still put mixes together, but I never chase performing on the ultra stages of the world, for example. And then that conversation made me realize subconsciously I was more committed at other things. I wanted to run a record label. I wanted to produce music. I wanted to consult for artists because they didn't have the resources. I'm not saying I had all the resources, but now, I live my life educating them, hoping that they can be empowered and they can live their best life as a creator. So if I'm doing all of these, and being good at it, and I love being on the podcast, love meeting great creative people from all around the world, promote their work, but also educate other creators, who have no direction at all. So I feel fulfilled about that, So, that's why, I never go on to perform in the biggest stages. There's a bigger purpose for me. God had a different plan, for Kino,
So
and I'm
there
like,
is no
okay,
failure. Yeah, there is really no
yeah.
failure, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So I never leave the whole entire industry. I just had other responsibilities in the industry and responsibilities that I love. It wasn't a bad thing, you know.
hmm
I enjoy what I do. With the guy who's just performing, on stage, or even a rapper, for example, yeah, he's fulfilled doing that. That's what he does, But there's different components to the industry, just like the book industry. The author needs an agent, needs a PR, needs a publisher, needs an editor. So all of those components come together, and everybody is a success at the end of the day. That rapper can't be on stage unless it's Kino who has the beat, Kino who has the marketing, Kino who has the PR, Kino who has the distribution and the publishing. So we need to move away from competition to collaboration more,
Okay.
but it's changing, you know,
hmm
creators are starting to get it. I don't need to compete with Karen, but how can I work with Karen? How can I learn from Karen? You know,
Right.
build a community with Karen. I don't need to compete with her. Oh, she wrote a book on Miami. Okay, I'm also going to write a book. Why? You know? Why? But yeah,
Yeah. So you're right. I think people sometimes get focused on one thing and they go in one direction and that doesn't work out and they want to just throw up their hands and quit. And you're right.
yeah,
There's another way to get to where you might be better suited. It's hard to
exactly.
embrace that. Right. Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
And I liked what
Yeah,
you said about collaboration because I think we have a lot to learn from each other. We all have something to learn from each other, right?
yeah,
So,
no, definitely. I mean, when I first met Mickey, right? I can't even remember exactly how it happened, but he reached out to me and he's like, would you interview authors on your show? I'm like, yeah, sure. I think it was actually an author, but it was a private author that came on. And
oh,
then somehow, he caught that and he was like, okay, would you love to interview authors? I'm like, yeah, I would love to expand into the book industry. And why I wanted to do that is because I started to evaluate for myself is that the music industry and the book industry is not much of a difference. It's only the end product that's different. But how we go about marketing, branding, distribution, PR, it's all the same. And
and
then
we
you
have some,
start to learn
of the same creative struggles, right? Creative
exactly.
and struggle, right? How do you come
Exactly.
up with ideas and what do you do when you get stuck? And yeah, right.
Yeah.
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 Because when I would chat to someone who's in the music business and then someone who's in the book industry, I sit them like, wait, that's the same
Yeah.
thing.
It's a good match. It's a really
The
good
same
match.
things are going on here. Exactly. And that was fascinating for me. And I mean, look, it's grown so great, over the last year. So proud of it because now, it's getting a bit of it all when it comes to the creative space. So that's great.
Good.
Yeah.
So,
Karen, where can people find you online?
so they
Where are
could
you
find me on
floating around?
Facebook is probably the best way to find me. Karen Dustman, author. I'm on Facebook. I have a small website, claritage.com, which is my mother's name, CLARITAGE.com. So that's me as well. And my books are all on Amazon. My romance books are under Abby Rice is my pen name. So thank you for asking about that.
Abby Rice.
Abby Rice.
Okay. What's the history with Abby Rice?
I'm sorry?
Abby Rice?
Abby Rice, right.
Yeah. How did that come along?
I was looking for a memorable name. So Abby is an old-fashioned name. I thought Abby would be perfect for historical romances. And I wanted something that was a thing, that was a tangible thing, so you could remember it by. So rice is a very tangible product, so that was
Yeah.
Abby Rice. I thought people would like it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's another comparison, right, to the music industry because another trend that's happening now with songwriters is they're creating different alias names
Right.
for different, types of music.
And I had to do the same thing with my books. My genres were so different. I had to differentiate myself exactly. So my nonfiction is under my real name, Karen Dustman, and my fiction is under Abby Rice. But yeah, so I can see why creatives in the music industry would do the same thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's I just signed like my first American client on a publishing deal, independent songwriter, and I mean she's doing the exact same thing. So she needs their assistance on how to manage this now going forward. So we've already got like the alias out there that's done. Now it's like her real name, but with a different type of music. So
Mhm.
you see, it's not a comparison. It's all happening. So you can, branch out if you don't want this name, your original birth name, to be associated with this type of book or story or genre. It works. It honestly works, and I've
So
been
are you going to write
enjoying.
a book? Are you going to write a book? Do you have a book in you?
I I've been blogging for a long time. Like I've always
Mhm.
loved to blog. Like I keep a journal and so on. And then it was this playbook that I released in 2025. It was just like tips and tricks, about the music industry, talking about AI, the blockchain, branding, recruited some templates, on how to like manage an income with an independent label. Which is not always easy, when I put this out there, I'm like, yeah, it can work this way, but you might end up in a situation where a project may cost more than you expected, and then you have to decide for yourself, am I going to take that risk? And me being me, I always take that risk. One day you can have so much, money to
Mhm.
work with, can be zero the
Mhm.
next day because of this opportunity that showed up. So yeah, put that out there. So I don't know. I would love to one day. I don't think now is the right time for me, but I would love to one day.
I would like to challenge you to write a motivational book. I think you have a lot of
Okay.
yeah, not maybe so much a little bit about your own life and your journey and
Yeah.
the lessons, the takeaways that you want people to know about.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. Thank you for that encouragement. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I do it because you challenged me, so I will do it, but I would love it to be, nonfiction. I would love.
If you ever want to do a book, let me know. I'll be happy to help you with it.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. See, this is what it's all about, This is what it's
It's a
all about.
collaboration.
Like, yeah, yeah. Like I want this podcast and this network, that are built to be something long term.
Right.
Build good relationships with whoever you come across, because you never know one day, hey
You never
Karen, can
know.
you help me out with this? Or, you never know, And that's what's so amazing about how this specific space is evolving. And I love it. You know,
Go.
I love
Good.
it. Yeah. So I just want to ask like one more question. So
Okay.
what's next? So what can people, listeners, your group, your communities expect from you in 2026?
Oh, what can they expect from me in 2026? Okay, so I'm going to have the fourth novel in my Zoe murder mystery series is coming out. I'm doing a nonfiction book on Native American plants in Nevada. Nevada is right across the border. We're about 5 miles away from the border of Nevada. There was a woman and her husband who did a study, botanical study of the medicinal uses of native plants in Nevada back in the 30s, 40s, 1940s. And it's just sort of languished. It was a government publication. It never really went anywhere. And so some friends and I are reissuing that. It's not copyrighted material. We're going to organize it a little differently. So the plants are listed by common name instead of by Latin name. We're going to add some pictures to it. So it's a medicinal uses of plants book, and that should be coming out next year. And I would really like to do a book about the immigrant trail. So the immigrants who came from the East Coast in California out to California during the gold rush came right through the area that I live in. And there's a canyon called Carson Canyon or Rocky Canyon, they used to call it back in the day. And I've collected diaries and historical information about that. This particular segment of the immigrant trail has not been written about in great detail. And it would be a fabulously fun book for people who actually wanted to travel it. You could stop and see the places where we're mentioned in the audio example. And I have a lot of it. Again, it's been a project where I've collected information for a lot of years. So it's something that I have a stack sitting on my file cabinet of research. It will be a place to put all that research. So I'm looking forward to that. So
Well, I challenge you to do it, finish it, get it out there.
Yay. All right. Thank you, Kina, so much. It's been really fun talking to you. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it is. And I'm sure I will see you again in the near future.
I hope so. All right. Have a good rest of
Yeah.
your day.
Yeah, you too. Bye, Karen. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.